Preparing for retirement isn't just something that happens the day you go to your boss's office, drop that letter on his desk and say, I'm done, I'm out of here. No, you're preparing for retirement from the moment you leave school. And if you don't take control, well, you lose control.
In this video, we're going to share 2 things that we wish we did different before retirement, along with some steps that anyone can do so you don't make the same mistakes as us. And if you take note of only just one of these things, it won't only keep your retirement dream on track, it has the potential to even bring that dream closer. And because we think you're amazing, we've also included something that we did right, which we think you can do too, and has the potential to change your complete outlook on life.
When I was 17, I left home and I was living in a room with no double glazing, no heating, and I actually had ice on the inside of my windows. I'd also opened my very first bank account. A couple of days after I'd opened that bank account, I had a phone call from my bank manager. Now, back in the day, a bank manager was just that, someone who would manage the bank. These days is very different. It's very computer controlled. So back then, a bank manager could ring you up and give you a telling off. Very different to this.
Computer says no.
So when the bank manager called me, he said, you opened an account a couple of days ago and today you're overdrawn. What are we going to do about it? Well, sadly for me back then, I was far too self-assured at the age of 17, certainly given someone who was living in virtual squalor. And my reaction to him was, well, what are we going to do about it? It seems like you need to give me an overdraft facility. He said, yeah, okay, I'll do that. Just be a bit more careful in future. And you know, that conversation set the trajectory for my early life with money. And even to this day, it makes me really angry. I'm annoyed at the bank manager, but I'm really angry at myself. I'm annoyed at him because, well, for me, this was the first time I'd ever dealt with someone who was a finance professional. I was 17 years old. And if, as he could have done, he'd have rung me up and said, Neil, you're overdrawn. Get in here now. We need to have a talk. He could probably have given me a talking to that could have changed my relationship with money. But what I actually learned was do what you want and there's seemingly no consequences. The bank manager kind of was quite friendly about the whole thing. And so I was a money screw up in my 20s without that short, sharp lesson that I could potentially have had from the bank manager. I went from the port of adolescence into the sea of adult life, taking my poor relationship with money with me. Now, this isn't one of the mistakes that we made, but you can use this as a lesson. If you're still acting like a kid in a candy store around money, then use this little story as a lesson to change things up. Change your attitude with money.
Our first regret is huge and the most difficult to learn from. Most difficult because we're all trying to actually please 2 people at the same time. And one of those is seemingly more vibrant, more cool and more important. And that is because it's you. It's you now.
The other person is the you of the future, the you that's looking forward to retirement. And the thing is, as humans, we have this issue. There's a phenomenon which is called temporal distance. And that's where we're unable to see the us of today and the us of the future as the same person. We see it as 2 separate entities. Now, while researching for this video, I've learned of a method recently that can solve temporal distancing. Let us know in the comments below if you're interested in that and you'd like us to make a video or 2 on that subject. We've discussed it in detail and it's quite a big subject. But if you're not interested in it, we don't really want to open that up and really go into it in detail.
So here's a financial example. Let's assume you've been presented with the opportunity to increase your saving rate by £200 per month due to a promotion at work.
Yeah, that's good, Sarah. But at that point, you're going to want to prioritise you now, that cool, vibrant, young person, aren't you?
Yeah, but if you did save that £200 a month, you could impact your future self profoundly.
Yeah, and a financial example for that, £200 a month. And then if you just increase that in line with inflation every year for, say, the next 10 years, that would give you £36,000. Your future self has got £36,000. And that £200, you probably wouldn't have even noticed it. You know what happens though? You prioritise today. You're thinking to yourself, a bit like I was when you're 17. I want that money now, be damned with the future. And that's what Sarah and I were like. That's where we were. You know, there were times when we had the opportunity to increase our savings rate, but we'd say, no, we've worked hard for that money.
That's
We
it, we
deserve to
deserve.
spend that now.
So what would we do if we could go back and influence our younger selves?
Well, we'd force them, Sarah. We'd say to them, get that money, get that 200 quid a month and put it in investments for your future self. But you know what? Our younger selves would probably respond like this.
I'll scream and scream and scream until I'm sick and I can.
Our simple advice here is think of your future self. I've heard people say, well, I'm not bothering to save for retirement. I don't even think I'm going to make it to retirement. But you know, the earlier you plan for retirement, the greater chance you've got of actually getting there, because you've put the steps in place. You're bringing your retirement date forward. And remember, if you want us to go into that thing about how you can get the temporal distancing and improve that situation, we can make videos on that. Let us know in the comments below if that is something you're interested in seeing.
Then there's the whole matter of pensions.
Yeah, that's right. And tell you what, us humans, we're a bit weird really, aren't we? It's just struck me while we were making this video that most of human problems come down to delayed gratification. We've got to do things today for our future selves. And our little chimp brains just aren't designed for that kind of thing. You know, the first company I worked at, I ended up one day going for lunch with the financial controller of the company. Now, this was in the 1980s where you would go to the pub for lunch, and often those lunches would turn into a whole afternoon affair.
Good old days.
Happy days, happy days. Well, in that conversation, he impressed upon me how critical, totally critical it was that I started saving for my retirement, get a pension going. He was saying, do it today. Don't hold off. And I'm thinking, this guy's a bit weird. I'm 17 years old.
Got an overdraft.
I've got an overdraft I can't even service. But if you're watching this, I still remember his name, John Shardlow. Let me know if you're watching this, John, because I really wish I'd listened to you really hard, because we would have retired even earlier than we actually ended up doing. And, you know, talking about that being in the 80s, I'm a Generation Xer. I come from an age of leg warmers and pastel colours.
Did they suit you?
Well, kind of. It was the decade that the world would rather forget, I think. But I absolutely loved my teenage years. But you know what? I think the Generation Xers and the millennials that came after us have been dealt a bit of a difficult hand, if I'm honest. In most cases, our parents were retiring with a watertight pension, a final salary, or a defined benefit scheme. And we learned from our elders, and our elders were doing just fine, thank you very much. Now, I wish when I was younger, there were alarms going off and sirens going off, telling us the world is changing. Yes, your parents have got these final salary pensions, but for you, when you come to retire, it's on you. You are the person who will define how good or bad your retirement will be. So for you, if you're not retired yet, it's on you. There is no safety net. It's down to you to plan your retirement. I'm really sorry to say that. Now, we've got the old age pension in the UK, you've got social security, you've got various schemes all around the world, but I'm pretty confident that that isn't going to keep you in the manner to which you've become accustomed. You have to take control for yourself. As I said at the start of this video, you've got to take control or you lose control. So what lessons can you take from this point? Well, we wish we'd paid more into our pensions at a younger age. And again, you might not be retired yet and going, yeah, maybe next year I'll put it off.
There's always something
There's
to spend your
always
money on.
something you want to spend it on.
Got to bills for something. There's always something.
Exactly. But you know what? I've never, in our time retired, met an early retiree who complained of having too much money. Now, savings is only half the job. The other half is investment and ensuring that you're invested in the right asset classes for your own risk profile. And then you need to interrogate the costs, because the costs can eat away at your retirement savings easier than you might ever believe. For example, the UK website unbiased.co.uk recently stated that the average financial advisor that's on a retainer is being paid between 0.25 and 1% of your pension pot each year. And if you can see the value for money for using that advisor, then that's great. But you know, I have seen financial advisors put people in funds where just the class that they've chosen has ended up costing their client more money. And that's on you to work out and understand. You might be thinking, wow, it's only 1%, it's not a big deal. But when you come to retire, you're likely to be looking at your pension pot from the perspective of percentages. You've heard about the 4% rule. Well, let's say, for example, you've got £1 million. You take 4%, you're getting 40,000. If your advisor is getting 1%, they're getting 10,000. They're getting 25% of your income. For what? I don't know. That's for you to work out for yourself. There are some advisors that provide fantastic value. I'm not sure that 1% is fantastic value. This is on you to work out.
I realise this can all sound a bit frustrating. After all, we're asking you to think about your future self, which could seem as though we're sucking all the joy out of life today.
We got you covered though. We got you covered because we made a video recently that showed you that it wasn't all about money. It's not about money. That's not where you get the joy from life. So I would highly recommend you watch this video next. This video is the answer to that problem. You tie these two together and you're set up for a fantastic plan for your retirement. Look, our dream is world travel. What's yours?